Oh, hey everyone. Welcome to Go Midwest Fishing's top 10 lakes to fish in Wisconsin. Now, one of our goals at this channel is to fish every lake in Wisconsin, gather information about that lake, and then pass it along to you. Now, I know this sounds like a big goal considering Wisconsin claims to have over 10,000 lakes. The way I see it is you narrow it down to lakes that have public access, a boat landing, and actually contains enough fish to be worthy to go after. Then that narrows it way down. So now only lakes that I have personally fished, documented, and have a video uploaded to YouTube are going to qualify for the top 10 list. Currently I have 85 lakes in Wisconsin that I've fished. So if your lake didn't make the top 10 list, it's probably because I haven't fished it yet. All right, let's get started. At number 10, we have Matthews Lake. Now, my dad's been fishing Wisconsin his entire life, and I asked him the other day, I said, Dad, what's your all-time favorite lake to fish? And he told me, Matthews Lake. So that's why it makes number 10 on my list. So my parents have had a cabin up by Minong, Wisconsin for 20 some years. Fortunately, they just had to sell it off last year, but they've spent many summers in the Minong area. And whenever my dad wants to have a fish fry, Matthews is his go-to lake because he knows he can catch his limited bluegills there. Now, personally me, I like to catch more game fish. So I've also fished this lake, and it's got some northern and bass in it, but they tend to be on the small side. Although it does have some muskies in there. I found out this by accident. I was up there with Reggie, and right along the north edge of the lake, it's this big shallow shelf. It's only maybe 5 feet deep, if that, and it's got a nice weed bed. And there's a lot of game fish trolling in through those weeds. And I had a bass on the line, and I was like, yes, I got an awesome bass. And it's struggling through the weeds, and I'm like, wait a minute, I got this gigantic northern on. And I got all excited, and then I pulled it into the boat. I'm like, wait a minute, I only have a bass on. That was really weird. Well, then I took a look at the bass and noticed that it was almost cut in half. And that's when I learned that it was actually a muskie I had on. So that was quite fun. I have not got another muskie since that one. Now this is just a small, easy to fish lake. So if you just want to go out and get some action, it's a good lake. So let's go over some of the pros of this lake. One, it's a small, easy lake to fish. It's loaded with panfish, and you can have a chance at a muskie there. Plus, it's not a very busy lake. You'll probably be the only ones on the lake. Now, some cons about this lake. The landing is right off County Road F, so there isn't much parking there, and you have to back up on the road to launch the boat, so you got to watch out for traffic going on Highway F there. So it's a parking for 2 to 3 vehicles, but you're just parked off on the side of the road, and there's not really a parking lot for your vehicles there. Now, since this is my dad's favorite lake, I went out and got him a little present. Right here, this is a laser engraved wood map of Matthews Lake. It's got the name up here, some stats about it. It's got all the fish species that are in the lake here. It's even got all the depth contours and stuff on it. You just hang that up in your house. Makes an excellent gift if this happens to be your favorite lake, or you have a cabin on a lake that you just want to put the lake map in there. I will put a link down below where you can get one of these maps, and you can get one for pretty much any lake in the United States, so check that out. All right, moving on to number 9, we got Bone Lake. So I discovered this lake kind of by a happy accident. Reggie and I were going ice fishing on a lake nearby there, and they just happened to have an aerator going on, and the ice was not safe to go on, so we looked for the next closest lake we could find. Saw Bone Lake, really knew nothing about it, and went there and was pleasantly surprised. Now this is located in Polk County, real close to Balsam Lake. It's a fairly big lake. It's long and skinny. It runs north to south, and it's actually quite deep. It runs 30 to 40 feet deep for most of the lake. But I gotta tell you, I've never seen so many fish on my fish finder or my cameras ever before. I mean, take a look here. See how many fish were just galore. It's anywhere from about 10 feet all the way down to 40 feet. When I was dropping my camera down there, it was just solid fish. Now, I've only fished this in the winter, and when I went there, the snow was very rough, deep snow. We were using our four-wheeler to get out there, and we couldn't explore much of the lake, so it was just so hard to get around. So I really would love to go back and try it again in the summer to see if it's still that good. It does contain, I know, some muskies, northern bass, and it's just loaded with those panfish. So some pros about this lake: it's got abundant fish. It's a multi-species lake. You can go for just about anything there. There's lots of places to fish, and it has a very nice boat landing. It's got a couple. I've only been to the north one, but nice, big, spacious landing. Now, some cons: it can be a busy lake. Reggie and I did try to fish it this last summer on Labor Day, and could not get a spot on the landing. It was completely full, so we ended up going to a different lake. And being such a deep lake, it's got steep shorelines, which kind of limits the areas you can fish in there. But being a big lake, you can find areas to fish. It's just the whole middle section, especially during the summer, is kind of hard to fish. You got to find those little shelves around the edges. All right, number 8 on the list, White Ash Lake. This was a viewer suggested lake by Braden Gurman. So thanks, Braden, for suggesting this lake. This was kind of another surprise. It's just a small little lake. It's just east of Bone Lake, actually, still out in Polk County, I believe. And its maximum depth is 9 feet, and that's in just one little hole. Otherwise, the whole lake is like 5 to 7 feet deep. This lake has a north and south part to it. I believe it's Apple River, kind of runs right through the middle. And although we tried getting up to the north part, it was just too shallow there. So I may have to go back with my smaller rowboat or something, or canoe, to get up into there to check out that. But this lake is filled with monster bluegills. And it didn't seem to matter where we fished on this lake. There was fish everywhere. Super easy to fish. We also caught some crappies, a northern pike, and a bass. Although bluegills was pretty much 99% of what we caught there. And they were big, and it was fun. So pros, it was full of big bluegills. Very easy to fish, easily accessible. It's kind of out in the country, beautiful setting. The cons: there wasn't much variety of fish, so if you're gonna go there, you're pretty much gonna go for some panfish. And it's susceptible to overfishing. Being a small lake with big bluegills, people can come and just wipe it out. So please, if you go to this lake, practice catch and release, and let some of those big bluegills go, and just keep the medium ones if you want something for dinner. Okay, now let's head south of White Ash. We're gonna go down near the town of New Richmond for lake number 7, Cedar Lake. Now I got 3 words for you: cribs, cribs, and more cribs. There are actually 12 sites on this lake with a total of 361 fish cribs. And there are just thousands of fish around these cribs, making it a great place to fish. Now, if you come here in the winter, you'll know where they are because there are hundreds of shacks piled on top of each one of these crib sites. But you can catch lots of fish here. We hooked into some nice crappies. There are just literally thousands of these small bluegills we saw. They were hard to bite, hard to get a bite when we were there. And I also saw some walleyes, some suckers. Now the pros: these cribs provide lots of structure for the fish, and it's a great spot to fish over. Now the cons are, well, especially in the wintertime, it can be hard to find a spot to fish because everyone's piled on top of these cribs. So you got to get there early and get a spot. And in the summer, I haven't been there in the summer yet, but I hear it gets kind of green and weedy. So probably best early in the year there. All right, 10 points to the person who noticed that I'm wearing a different shirt. Somehow I skipped right over number 7, Cedar Lake, and had to come back and re-record this one. Number 6 on the list, Day Lake. This is out in the Chequamegon National Forest, just east of Hayward. It's in the town of Clam Lake. And this is one of the few lakes that Reggie and I go back to almost every year. It has become one of our favorite lakes, but it only makes number 6 on the list because it seems to be one of those hit or miss lakes. We either have the best fishing day of our life on there, or we don't catch a thing. And you never know which one it's gonna be. It is one of the most beautiful lakes I have fished on, even though it is a flowage, so the bottom is just kind of a flat, mucky bottom, so it's really dark water, a lot of floating bogs, but it's completely surrounded by wilderness. There's like no homes on the lake, but there is the Day Lake Campground, which is another one of my favorite campgrounds. It's very primitive there, but it's just surrounded by these really tall pine trees, and there's usually not too many people there, so we kind of like it when we're back there secluded by ourselves. It does get a little scary there at night though. It gets pitch black and you're in these big trees. And yeah, a funny story I think I told before is Reggie went out to the bathroom, and as he was walking back, he fell in the ditch and made a big crashing sound where, and I locked him out of the camper, and he's out there with a flashlight and a hatchet just like, let me in. And I'm like, I don't know what's out there. Anyway, we had some good times there. So yeah, we discovered this lake by accident. We were actually just finishing up on another trip we're doing, and on the drive home we're like, yeah, we got a few hours here, let's find a lake on the way home. And we just looked on the map, found it, and we had no idea what was in this lake. And that's when Reggie caught his very first muskie, although it fell off. We didn't get it in the boat. But from that day on, we were hooked as muskie fishermen. And you know, since we don't catch very much muskies, we try to go back to Day Lake like once a year to kind of boost our confidence. We call it our morale booster lake. All right, pros on Day Lake: you're almost guaranteed to catch a muskie. In fact, I brought my little boy Reed there last summer to catch his very first muskie, and he ended up catching it. There's lots of it's a very scenic lake. Like I said, it just gets very picturesque, especially I've been there after some big storms, and then the clouds just look awesome and reflect on the lake, and it's just amazing out there. It's very quiet. If you just want to get away from it all, there's usually very few people out there. We normally have the lake to ourselves. Otherwise, there's maybe 1 or 2 boats at most out there. All right, the cons. It's, like I said, kind of a hit or miss lake. It seems like every other year we go there, we do good, and then we don't do good. So I don't know. Can't really predict what's going to happen there. We just go and do our best. Lots of hazards in the lake. It is a flowage, so there's lots of submerged logs and bogs. My old boat, we were flying across the lake, and there's a big log floating under the water I didn't see, and it hit the motor, and the motor went flying up, and yeah, it did some damage to the motor. But so go very slow if you're on this lake, and watch out for the hazards. All right, let's go to lake number 5, Ike Walton Lake. This was another pleasant surprise. This is over in the Rhinelander area. It's in the Lac du Flambeau Indian Reservation near Minocqua. And I like to say what Day Lake is to muskies, Ike Walton is to smallmouth bass. Man, did we have some fun with the smallmouth there, and they were all really decent sized. Now, if you're daring enough to get on this lake, you'll probably have it all to yourself. The landing here is something else. First of all, you take this just dirt road full of big mud holes and such, miles back into the woods in the middle of nowhere, and then there's one little turnaround like cut out between some trees to get turned around. So if there's another vehicle back there, I don't know how you'd ever get turned around. The landing's down a kind of a steep, curved, completely sandy hill with a big bank on one side. My truck was barely doable. I had to try it a few times, and as I tried making the turn, I'd ride up on the bank, and yeah, it took a while to get the boat back in the water, and you definitely need 4-wheel drive. So if you can do that, you're gonna have fun on this lake. Now the whole north end is like this big shallow bay, and all we did is we just trolled around with some crankbaits and such, and we're just getting smallmouth after smallmouth. We also kind of just off the landing, we found a spot, caught some big bluegills, and it was really weird. We saw this muskie came up to our boat, had his mouth wide open, was just like shaking his head above the water. So I'm not sure what happened there, if he was previously caught or had something stuck in his throat, or it was kind of the weirdest thing I've ever seen. He just kind of floated right on by our boat. He just went, like, Reggie touched him with with his pole or something as it went by. But yeah, that was kind of weird. Now on the south end, there's kind of a crescent-shaped island. We fished around that, caught some more smallmouth, and on the southern end, had a nice weed line there too. Caught some more down there. So just excellent fishing day. They were there. It was very cloudy and kind of rainy. So I don't know if that, sometimes that helps with the fish biting. So maybe it was just that, but we had a good day there. So the pros of this lake, it's just smallmouth heaven, man. You like smallmouth, this is the place to go. It's very quiet. We were the only ones out there. There was some houses on the southern end, so maybe if they're out fishing, but we didn't see anybody. And even though it's on the reservation, this is one of the lakes you do not need to go buy a permit for. Now the cons, very difficult landing, hard to access, and the mosquitoes were horrible. So once you're on the lake, you're fine, but trying to get that boat launched, oh my gosh, the mosquitoes ate us alive. All right, we're up to number 4 on the list. Number 4 is the very first lake I filmed for Go Midwest Fishing, and that is Balsam Lake in Polk County. So this is pretty close to that Bone Lake and Ash Lake we've already talked about, and it's probably the most popular lake in the area. And I love the shape of the lake. It's got a lot of interesting nooks and crannies and bays, and you got just about a little bit of everything in this lake. And it's another one of those multi-species lake where you can spend multiple days here fishing for many different fish. And when we went there, man, we caught some big fish too. We had a couple on that I think Reggie broke one off, and I don't know what it was, but it was big. This lake has lots of boat landings around it, so you can access it from many different spots. So the pros, we got excellent fishing, endless spots to fish. You can fish it for many days and access it from many different landings. Cons, it is a popular lake, so you are going to have to share it with other people. On to the next page. We're up to number 3. This one I'm kind of cheating on a little bit. It's the McKenzie chain of lakes. So we got Big McKenzie, Middle McKenzie, and Lower McKenzie. 3 lakes, all part of the same chain though. And this is back in the Minong area again. All right, so we're gonna go from south to north. The very southern lake is Big McKenzie, and like it states, it is the biggest of the 3 lakes. What I really like is all 3 lakes kind of have their own little personalities. And Big McKenzie, it's kind of a big round lake. It's got lots of bottom structure. It's just, you can see the bottom, you got lots of humps and bays and all kinds of stuff. Even though it's a round lake, there's lots of different places to fish in there. It's another one of those multi-species lakes where you can catch everything from panfish to muskies. And we didn't catch any muskies there. I believe we might have seen one or two, but we didn't get to catch them. The landing here, it's kind of right off the road again. So the parking lot's on the opposite side of the road. You got to cross the road, and then the landing is a little sketchy. It's kind of broken up and soft sand. And there is no dock or anything here, so you have to back way into the water. You're gonna have to get your feet wet to get in here, but when you're done, it's worth it all. All right, let's go to Middle McKenzie. It's the bottom structure is it's pretty similar to Big McKenzie. A lot of humps, and it's a round lake. Lots of places to fish. It's just a smaller lake. I believe if you watch the video, I say there wasn't any muskies in that lake, but there actually was. I was a little sick that day and not feeling the best. Plus, we just got done fishing like 8 lakes, and I got my info mixed up there. But it does have some muskies in there. It does have a little bit better landing than Big McKenzie. And it was a fun lake to fish. I really like that lake. Then we go to the farthest north lake, which is Lower McKenzie, which you'd think would be on the bottom, but it's all the way up at the farthest north. It is the smallest and shallowest of the three lakes. It's got some small pike and bass in there, but if you're gonna fish there, go for the bluegills. It was loaded with bluegills. We had a lot of fun with that. Again, kind of some interesting bottom structure there. Fun lake to fish. And it does have a decent gravel boat landing. Once again, no dock or anything, so you're gonna have to probably get your feet wet to get in there. So pros, all three of these lakes are really fun to fish, have nice scenery, and you're gonna have lots of action. The cons, all of them have primitive landings without docks, so you are gonna have to get in the water to launch your boats there. All right, down to number 2, Chain Lake. All right, I discovered this while working my day job as a pilot. I was flying over from Minneapolis, I think over to maybe Appleton, something like that. And right in the middle there, right around the town of Chetek, New Auburn, there was this big group of trees filled with lakes and no homes and hardly any roads. And I'm just like, what is this area just filled with lakes that I've never seen before? I even asked Reggie, he lives in Barron, which is not too far from there, and he's like, I've never seen those lakes either. So I had to check it out. So we took a fishing trip there. And Chain Lake, it's just one of many lakes in the area, and they're all excellent lakes. But from Chain Lake itself, you can, it's part of like a 4-lake chain that you can all get to from the same landing. Now, when we went to this lake, it was, there was a big storm going on, so we kind of had to wait for the storm, and then we fished right after the storm. It was kind of cloudy, a little misty out, and I think it was just perfect conditions. But we were catching big pike nonstop. I think Reggie had 3 or 4 of them in the boat before I even got a line in the water. Yeah, so this whole lake, this whole area was good. Love this lake. And the pros, there were lots of big fish and lots of action on this lake, and it wasn't crowded. I don't think I saw a boat on that lake the whole time we were there. Cons, I just put it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. You're far from like bait stores or anything, so we tried to go get some bait. We had to drive into New Auburn to get bait and come back. Not many places to get food. There are a few resorts. We stayed at a resort there, but they were only open like 2 days a week where you can go into the restaurant and eat. So not a whole lot in the area if you need amenities, but if you want to get away from it all, it's a great place and a lot of lakes in the area you can fish. All right, we are down to number 1, our all-time favorite lake to fish in Wisconsin. We're going back to the Rhinelander area. It is Lake Tomahawk. Now, I heard they have a bad thing to say about this lake. This is an amazing lake. It is a large lake. It's got all kinds of nooks and crannies and bays, and you can spend at least a whole day here, if not a couple days. And no matter where we fished, we did good. It's a multi-species lake. You can catch just about anything you want in this lake. When we were there, we stayed at the Indian Mounds campground, which is right on the lake. You can access it from right there. It's part of the Northern Highland American Legion State Forest. I know it's a big name, but that forest has like 30 some campgrounds or whatever throughout that whole area. So Tomahawk's just one lake in that area, and all these lakes, you can't go wrong no matter which lake you fish in this Rhinelander, Minocqua, Woodruff area. There's just hundreds of lakes, and I love them all. But Tomahawk is my favorite of them all. So if you want to plan a fishing trip, I'd suggest going up that area. Lots of campgrounds. Grab your camper out and go fish some of those lakes. Now, if you've watched any of my fishing videos, you know that Reggie is one of the guys I fish with pretty much every time. So he's been on almost every one of these lakes that we're talking about. So I had him make his own top 10 list so I could compare and make sure we were kind of on the same page. And overwhelmingly, we both picked Tomahawk as our favorite lake. And there was only one other lake on there that Reggie had that I didn't put on my top 10 list, although it was on my short list, but I had to narrow it down to 10. So this one got cut. So we'll give an honorable mention to Gull Lake in Trego, Wisconsin. It's one of those lakes that my dad fished when He's up at his cabin. He said, "Yeah, you gotta go try this one out." So we did. It's another one of those long, skinny lakes. It's not real big. It's got a landing right on the east and west side, right in the center. You can access it from either side. I think Reggie remembers this lake because I was pretty sick the day we fished it. And when I did my introduction, I called myself Reggie, and he thought that was pretty hilarious. So, anyway, it's just kind of a shallow, easy to fish lake. Most of it's 5 to 15 feet deep, and it's loaded with small pikes and medium bass. We fish those all during the day, and then in the evening, the crappies come out and some of the bluegills. We just go down the middle of the lake, and you can find where they're spotting. Just throw a little bait overboard, and you can catch a lot of panfish. All right, so there's my top 10 list. If you want to see any of these lakes in more detail, I will put a direct link to the actual video of each one of these lakes down in the description. You can also visit GoMidwestFishing.com, where I give all the technical specs and stuff I didn't show you in the video. Although I will admit, I'm a little behind on updating that. So if it's any of the recent lakes we did, I may not have them on there yet. It takes an incredible amount of work to do all this, so I'm doing my best to keep it up. But I do have quite a few on there already if you want to check that out. So if you like this video, I am currently working on my top 10 Minnesota lakes to fish. With any luck, that one should be out next week, so make sure you don't miss that one. Now, if you're curious about the other 85 lakes that I fished in Wisconsin, there is a Wisconsin Lakes playlist right here. If you click on that, that'll show you all the lakes that I had to choose from this list. All right, now I want to hear from you. Let me know what your favorite lake is in Wisconsin, and just write it down in the comments. I'll put that lake on my list of next lakes to go fish, and when I go there, I'll give you a shout out. Everyone, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to tune in next week.